leafier club. Always enjoy coming here, and not to be on a sad note, but I didn't really know that my buddy Seymour passed away, and so I just found that out, so I apologize about that. I didn't know, but I've had him on my boat and his whole family, including grandkids, quite a few times. He's a great guy. We're going to go over some hopefully interesting stuff. I mean, we're going to talk about bugs. I mean, how exciting can bugs be? But I'll try to make it exciting for us. So my new program is called What Do Trout Eat? Now, there is a bunch of different things in a still water environment that they have an opportunity to eat. Also in moving waters, in rivers and streams too. But as you can see on that chart, there's a lot, and that's the year-round diet of productive still waters. Can everyone see the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Okay, how about my sound? Am I too loud, too low? Am I good? Okay, so we're going to start with chironomids. So chironomids are the trout's main food staple, and chironomids will live, it doesn't matter where, any body of water that the water lasts long enough, they will multiply and learn and live in any body of water at all. So we have chironomids, we have scuds, we have damsels, dragonflies, leeches, nice juicy T-bone right there for the trout, water boatmen, calabatus, which is the name for a mayfly in a still water environment, caddis, snails, Daphnia, the dreaded Daphnia, nasty stuff. Bait fish, water beetles, and then we got terrestrials like ants and grasshoppers that also will blow in the water, and the trout have no problem dining on those. So we're going to start out with the chironomid. In a year-round diet, it's about 40%. But when you move into a spring situation, especially at a lake like Crawley, it's probably closer to about 85% of their diet in the beginning of the season. So the trout are really seeking them out. There's a lot of them to be found. They will hatch from January all the way through September, but their main stay is April through September. They're a species of Deuterium. They've been around for over 200 million years. Deuterium means two wings at the adult. 3,500 species in North America alone. Let's talk about the life cycle real quick. So we have the egg at the very bottom. That's what they start out as. Then they go to the left-hand side where it says larva. They can last for over 2 years in that setup where they're just a little red worm. From there, after that, they go into the top picture, which is the pupa, 2 to 3 days. And then they'll become the adults, and they'll fly around anywhere from 2, sometimes if they're lucky, a little bit longer, maybe 5 days, but mostly about 2 days. They'll lay their eggs, and then they'll expire. So they have a long period of time underneath the water, very short once they hatch. We're going to start with the larva. That's what they look like right there, right out of the bottom of the lake floor. They build these little mud cylinders, and they go right inside there, and that's where they hide. Well, the trout know that. Trout are professional eaters, just like us. Doesn't matter if we've been sleeping for 12 hours, as soon as we wake up, we know where our food is. Trout know the same thing. They know exactly where their food item is. So I want to try to help you understand where they are in the cycle and what kind of changes you can make to try to catch more fish. Our next part of the cycle is pupa. So again, 2 to 3 days, they just kind of sit right on the bottom, anywhere from about 6 inches to 15 inches, and just kind of wait to build up enough oxygen to start flowing to the surface. So they're very red in the beginning like that, but then they start changing colors, and they just sit right on the bottom. The trout love them when they're in this stage, because they'll stay there for a couple of hours to a couple of days, and the trout will just swim back and forth and just filter feed through them. That's where we want to get our flies, right down there tight to the bottom. Now, my apologies for the bottle cap having some writing in the bottom of it. I didn't even think about that until I really started looking at it. But look at how they wiggle. So let's look at that again. Very, very active. They move when they want to get ready to try to start moving through the water. They move through there pretty good. There's one of my size 16 patterns right at the very bottom. You can see what they look like. Once they move to the surface, they're very, very shiny. The oxygen is built up, so now they're trying to push themselves. So what they do is they get to the surface, they push through, they crawl out of their shell, or they molt out of their shell like a snake or a lizard, and then they dry their wings off and they start popping off the water just like that. So every one of those that you see just coming right off the top of the water, they come from the bottom of the lake floor, they push through the surface, and now they're drying their wings out and starting their adult life. That's an adult right there. Now the reason why I have a pattern right next to that is chironomids in the very beginning of the season are going to be at the very largest point that you're going to find them throughout the season. Very, very large. So how many anglers fish Crawley Lake here? So what do you normally fish for size at Crawley Lake? 16, 18, right? Most everybody? Okay, this is the first week at Crawley Lake. That's a size 12 that's next to that adult. That gives you a really good idea that in the beginning of the season, you can fish some big bugs at Crawley. So the larva, there's a pattern that I use, a larva pattern. To the right is the pupa, and then another pupa as it starts to build up the oxygen and underneath its skin. And then the far right is the emerger, where it just really starts coming to the surface. It's good to have a few different larvae or blood midge patterns. It's good to kind of change up the head color. You see one head color is black, one's white. You go with copper, brass, gold. You just want to kind of mix them up. And then here's some pupa patterns of either staples that have been around forever, the copper and the silver. That is my pupa emerger, and I caught the most largest fish that I've ever caught at Crawley Lake on that pattern right there. So fly lines that we would use to present the chironomids, floating lines with an indicator. Leader setup's pretty easy. 3x from the fly line to the top fly, and then 4x to the bottom fly. Then you can, if you don't want to fish an indicator, if it's shallower water, take the indicator off and fish a floating line. Just have a longer leader. I don't like a tapered leader. What I like to do is just do straight 2x or 3x. And my rule of thumb to start with is if you're fishing, let's say you're fishing in 7 feet of water, you add 5 feet to the leader, make it 12 feet long, because what's going to happen is the leader is going to be up on the top. You want to get a nice little bend that goes down into the water. I like 5 feet longer than the depth of the water that I'm fishing. You can fish them on a hover line too. A hover line is simply just a line that just gets about a foot or so underneath the water and doesn't want to go any farther. It just kind of hovers and hangs. So that's a good way to present them. Same leader setup. I like 5 feet longer as a start for, if you're fishing 10 feet, a 15-foot leader. If you do it right, sometimes you get lucky. Now, this is a 26 1/4 brown trout from Crooked Creek at Crawley. Now, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, man, I charmed that fish. I'm the man. No. That fish ate a size 14 emerger in 26 feet of water. That trout right there is chasing around all the small ones, the ones that are 7 or 8 to a pound. They're like 7 or 8 inches long. That's his diet. That's what that fish eats. But I guess he wanted an after dinner mint, and I was in the right place at the right time. Got lucky. Scuds, so super high in protein, a very large portion of the dietary chart. In some lakes, scuds can be just as thick and prolific as chironomids, and they can be basically the whole food source in a lot of the lakes. Scuds are very, very important depending on the lakes that you're fishing. They're around January through December, so they're around all the time, readily to be eaten. And the scud will share a common crustacean root with a shrimp, with a lobster, or a crayfish. It's kind of cool. There's about 800 freshwater species of scuds, different kinds. There's a good looking juicy little morsel right there. There's 2 types of scuds. There's a hyella and a gamaris. The gamaris is a little larger. The hyella are the ones that are mostly commonly found more than the Damaris in the still waters. Pretty interesting bug. Now, a lot of these photos are taken from inside an aquarium, so they're very, very translucent. You can see through them. These guys are chameleons. Once the weeds start growing, they'll get very, very green to match the weeds, and they'll try to blend in. Can anyone see what that scud is eating on right there? Thought that was kind of a cool photo, so I'll highlight it for you. Look. There's a chironomid larva that he's grabbed out of the tank, and he's latched onto it and he's eating it. So they will eat things that are alive too. They can be aggressive. So the scud life cycle, 1 to 3 weeks as the egg, then they move into the baby scud. They might molt about 10 times, meaning they'll crawl out of their shell and become a little larger each time. About a year to get to the adult, and the adult will last about another year after that. Now that's what they look like after they molt. So they have a really hard shell. They're trying to grow, so the shell cracks open and they pull themselves out, and now they're in this state right here, which is actually called the tenorol, where they're very, very soft and they're waiting for their bodies to get a lot harder so they can start kicking and swimming around. The scud life cycle, mating can occur several times a year through late spring and fall. Now this is what it really should be like, right, lady anglers? I mean, in real life, right now, is that after reproduction, the females are carried around on the backs of the males. Why not? You guys have gone through a lot of work, right? I mean, let's try to implement that in our everyday life if we can. So that's kind of a very interesting thing, is that the male will carry the female around wherever she wants to go until they finish everything up. The eggs are carried in this little brood pouch, and you can see the orange eggs that are inside of the body up at the very top. They're very bright orange, so we tie a lot of orange in our scud patterns to imitate pregnant scuds. They're going to try to latch on to every little bush and every little stick up that they can, so that they feel protected. On the bottom, you start getting weeds like that. They start changing the same color as the weeds on the bottom of the lake floor. Those are scuds swimming. Now, I've witnessed scuds for a long time, 15 years or 16 years, whatever it's been. And they usually, I've watched them in the water just kind of bounce up, bounce down. They kind of do this crazy up and down, where they do these bursts. I've never seen them move that fast. So this is fascinating. This is fascinating to me to see that they actually can motor pretty good. So that might change up the way that I'm going to present my fly. I might start fishing my scud patterns maybe a little bit faster if I'm not getting grabbed on a real slow retreat. So this is a little closer view of the scud, kind of moving around. He's going to show you just how fast they can go. All of a sudden they just pull some water in and they just bolt really fast. That's a scud belly. Now, if I'm a trout, I want to live in a lake that has a lot of scuds, because I want a belly like that. That's nice. I mean, they're just gorging themselves. Big, fat, thick fish on scuds, high protein. Scud patterns can be light colored, dark colored. You can get even really crazy like this. The two imitations are on the bottom, and the real scuds are on the outside. So whoever tied those did a really magnificent job of making them look almost like the real thing. Here's my scud box. I used to take 8 and 90-day trips into Utah and Idaho a lot. Don't do that anymore. I'm guiding all the time, but you have to have a few different color scuds. It'll help you. You can see some of the fragrant ones in there too with the orange. That's a really nice pattern. All you do is put a nice orange bead right in the middle of the pattern and put your dubbing around it and the shell right over the top, and really nice looking pattern there. And I found this one on the internet. I have no idea how long this angler took to tie that, but that's pretty cool. I mean, that's about as realistic as I think as you can get. Fly line tactics, the same thing as we were using with the chironomids. Floating lines with the indicator, the same leader setup. Just change out the chironomid to a scud. Same thing, a floating locator, longer leaders. 5 feet, I like 5 feet longer than the depth of the water. Hover lines are really good. Experiment with those What's really nice about cover lines is if there's current or if there's wind, you can get it down underneath the surface and get a lot straighter line to your fly. That's a stud fish right there. I'm afraid that will never ever happen again, but that's a 19.5-inch rookie from Kerman. And so Department of Fish and Wildlife decided we're not going to stock Kerman with brook trout anymore. It's worked for, what, 30 years or more? Magnificent. And you can't even get your hands around them, so they decided they're not going to do that anymore. They don't want to have a successful way like that, so they changed it up. This is my favorite scud pattern. I've used all over the West. I've never seen a scud that color. But that's a really good pattern. There's a lot of big fish on that pattern. Damsels are our next food item. So the damsels, it shows 8% on the dietary food chart for the year, but when they come out in their heyday right here in June, July, and August, I guarantee you it's got to be up in the high 20s and 30s. I mean, the trout are just gorging themselves on damsels. They have a lineage that traces back, basically to the beginning of time. Here's what the adults look like. If you can't see them, I'll highlight them, but they're blue. Now, when they're in the water and they live all those years underneath the water, they're chameleons also. They change colors to their environment. But when they hatch out, you can see them for miles. 3 different damselfly families with close to 100 different species. I thought that was a cool photo. Damsel right up on top of my hand there. Their cycle, 1 to 3 weeks, they come out of the egg. They go 2 months to sometimes 3 years in the nymph stage. And they'll go through about 10 or 12 instars where they break out of their shell, become larger. Then they go to the adult that lasts a few weeks. Let's talk about the cycle a little bit. So the nymph, fascinating. So there's another name for the nymph, whether it's a damsel or a dragonfly, mayfly, stonefly. In this nymph stage, they're called naiad. And that's a name that you don't really see a whole lot of fly fishermen use, but they're called naiad. They go through, again, 10 to 12 instars. They can reach up to 1 inch. So that's the nymph or the naiad stage right there. Now they go in from the nymph stage. Once they want to become the adult, they crawl out on anything they can find. In this case, this is an anchor rope that's over the side of the boat. And they go into what we call a tenoral stage. Now you notice the one on the right, his wings, he's just barely crawled out of his shell. I mean, he's very, very soft. His wings are not even as long as the one on the left-hand side. But this will take about 1.5 hours to 2 hours for them to harden up. They're very vulnerable at this stage. They can just barely hang on to anything. They can't fly, so the wind will push them out into the water. And wow, do the trout love them when they're in that tenoral stage. Very soft, easy to get at. Once they completely dry out, they become the adult. Adult's pretty cool looking. This is how they mate. They mate in what's called the wheel position, where the male puts his claw right behind the female's head. And I know that sounds, that sounds a little aggressive, a little crazy, but the biologists, when they study these bugs, they see that the female actually has 2 small little indentations in the back of her head where the claw gently goes in and they latch on together. So it's a perfect scenario for them. There are some adults, lots of adults. Now this is how they swim. So this is what I impose to you as an angler and to myself, because I gotta make my fly do that. Now how many times have you been fishing damsels where you have fish that are rolling all around you and they're taking the damsels? You can see the nymphs in the water. You can see them, moving around. But you cannot get them to eat your fly no matter what. You're not getting the right motion. They see that. They see millions of them, and one that's just kind of just sitting there, not doing anything, not moving. They don't like that. So we got to figure out a way, and I'll show you how we can do that. So they're chameleons, like I said. Early season, there's no weeds. It's just muddy bottom, debris on the bottom. So they're very, very dark in that stage to try to camouflage themselves. Once we get the weeds starting to grow out like this, we get weeds on the bottom, very green. Guess what? They change. I don't know why I'm struggling with this, sorry. They change colors. So they change to the weed color, very, very green. So they change from dark to green. They will try to match their surroundings. So when they're hatching, they're coming out on the tules or anchor ropes or on the side of the boat, on the side of your float tube. A lot of times you'll see them. They're coming from that nymph stage to the tenoral stage, where they're very, very easy to get to. Weedy stick-up areas. So here's a scenario now of how it really works. So we're going to go wind from left to right. So the wind's going to be traveling in this direction right here. So are the nymphs. They're going to be doing the same thing. They're going to be following the direction. They're trying to get to the weeds or to the shoreline as quick as they can so that they can crawl out of their shell and get into that tenoral stage that I showed you and try to dry off. And that's about a 2-hour process, so a lot of them get blown into the water. Trout love them. And then they do make it to the adult, and they turn into the blue damsel, the adult, like that. Now, one of your tactics, the way to fish, is you don't want to cast straight upwind or straight downwind. You want to cast right across the wind. Like when you're fishing in a river, where you cast, the line's pretty straight, all of a sudden you get this bow in your line, the first thing you do is you bend the line up. Well, you don't do that when you're fishing damsels with a little current or into the wind. Just let the line just continue to go down and just let the fly itself just act like it's swimming and get pulled nice and slow with the wind. That is a really good technique, and they will hammer that somewhere between those three scenarios there. This is a balanced pattern. The hook shank, or the hook eye of the hook is right there in the middle. So it's a balanced damsel that's going to sit nice and level in the water, just like it's supposed to be swimming. Now, we talked about that movement right there. How on earth do we imitate? How do we get our fly to do that? There's really no retrieve that's going to really get you to do that. So what we do is we go back to the pattern. You always tie these, most of the time, on a long shank hook. Just tie about a third of the way into the hook, the front material, and leave the rest of the material hanging off the hook. What is that material going to do? It's going to be all over the place. So when you're either moving the fly line, or you're stripping, or you're putting any movement to the fly at all, the marabou feathers or whatever you're using as the tail is going to be doing that bouncing motion, and that's going to pick up your rate of being able to catch fish. It's a really good technique to use when you're tying your bugs. Now this is a floating nymph, a floating head. So they'll come up and they'll come to the surface and they'll just get pushed by the wind, and as it says, very slow or no retrieve. Just cast it across wind and just let it slowly move. I know that's a hard thing to do. It was a hard thing for me to do about 12 years ago when Doug Willett introduced me to that. And I'm like, really? You don't want me to move it? I mean, usually, no. I want you to cast it right at the weed beds. I just want you not to stack line, don't do anything, just let it drift. And I, really? And I cast like 3 times, and all of a sudden my arm got straightened out, and I went, okay, I got you. I like it. It works. So it's a good technique. So again, there's the real bug on the right-hand side, and then you have the pattern with a very long, slim tail. Now these damsels are super thin. Until you get them in your hand, you don't even really notice that they're about as thin as a pencil lead. You know, they have the little legs and stuff in the head that makes them a little thicker, but they're very, very thin. So you want your patterns to be very, very thin with your material. Now, in that tenoral stage that we were talking about right there, when they get blown into the lake, that's a great pattern because it's got a lot of that light-colored material on it. It's just laying in the water, and it looks like it's been blown in. Got a lot of nice fish on that pattern. That's also Doug Willett's pattern. And that's the adult that's supposed to imitate that. Now, I'm going to be honest. In the 20 years that I've been stillwater fishing, I don't even think I've caught maybe a dozen fish on the adult. And sometimes I've been pretty aggressive and tried to get them to eat it, but they like the nymph and the tenoral stage a lot more than the adult. So the same thing, the fly line tactics are going to be indicators if you have a balanced pattern with a floating line. Excuse me, double up your damsel patterns. Damsel on the top, damsel on the bottom, or maybe just one if you want to do that. Floating lines again are perfect for damsels because you're fishing damsels in a lot of shallow water. The hover lines work well too. It gets down under the surface. Now with the damsels in the summer, the fish are very, very sensitive to shadows, and they don't like your fly line very much. So I'll fish, even though that only says 10 or 12, I like about a 14 or 15 foot leader. I like it a long ways away from my fly line to try to keep the shadow down, which is pretty good. Damsel flies, very aggressive, about 13 to 15% in the summer. Now we just, dragonflies. So we're going to back up here. Now the damsel that we just talked about is the one on the right-hand side, very long and slender. The dragonfly is different, very, very thick and much bigger. The other thing is that the wings on the damsel are long, just like their body, so when they land, just put them in behind themselves like this. When the dragonfly lands, they can't do that. They just stay out like this. So that's another way to figure out which one is which. But the body size should really tell you right away. So late spring through late summer, dragonflies. Now, the dragonfly has been around since the beginning of time, before the dinosaurs. There's a fossil of one right there. They say that they've been around over 300 million years. And there he is right there in all of his splendor. This right here is a fossil, supposedly 312 million years old. Now I know it doesn't look like it's very big, but it's a dragonfly that had about a 30-inch wingspan. They were monsters. They were brutes back then. So they think they're pretty big right now. Back in the old days, before the dinosaurs, they were monsters. They look like that. There's an archaeologist right there that's doing this thing and trying to, paint it up and show just exactly how big it was. So they were very big back then. But nowadays, 1 inch to 3.5 inches. A bunch of different colors. 450 dragonfly species in North America, 1,000 worldwide. Beautiful colors. I mean, they're amazing. And you see them, you don't have to be out on the water fishing. You can be at the park and you can see them just buzzing all over the place. Bunch of different colors. There's little or no doubt that they are the king of the underwater world and outside too. So, this is what basketball season is supposed to be. LeBron James is the king. He's not the king. This is the king right here. This guy is aggressive. They're about the size of your pinky. They're really, really big. They're thick. Underneath the water, this is how aggressive they are. They will attack things that are their same size or larger. They pull water in and shoot water out like a jet so they can really take off really fast. So he just grabbed a minnow that's the same size that he is. Now, I really would advise you, if you find them under rocks or you're exploring, don't pick them up. I mean, they bite down pretty good. You get a nice nip from them. But they're very, very aggressive. They will mate in the same way as the damselfly in the wheel position. The eggs, from the egg, they go to the nymph, and then they're in the nymph stage for about a year. They'll go through about 15 molts, so they get really big. Now, the old timers, when you do a lot of research and books and stuff, woolly boogers actually were made, the big woolly boogers, they're good size, to imitate the dragonfly nymph. That's what it shows in a lot of the text and stuff that's been written. There's one there that is the picture out at Kerman Lake. A little closer view. Didn't pick him up. I left him alone because it's pretty aggressive. So when you look at this, I'm going to show it to you again, maybe one more time. What I'm trying to get into your mind as a fly fisherman is, if I'm going to fish a dragonfly nymph, I got to make that dragonfly nymph come flying up off the bottom and then work its way back down. It's got to move like that because it's got to imitate the food source that you're trying to get it to imitate. They do the same thing. Dragonfly nymphs do the same thing as the damsel nymphs. They crawl out on anything that they can. This is pretty cool. So here we go. So here they come out of their shell. Pull themselves out. Look at how soft and clear that they are. So now they're in that teneral stage. So now all that is just a shell. That dark is nothing but a shell, and here's the adult that's come out. They take about 3 hours before they start drying, and they'll start looking like that, and then all of a sudden they'll dry up and completely harden up, and they'll be after everything that's flying. They attack everything. If you watch them out on the lake, they want to try to eat everything they can. Their size are a little bit smaller. So a lot of the patterns that will work well, these are patterns tied with deer hair, and they have a head that's made out of foam, so they float. A size 4 to a size 8 or a 6 is a good size right in the middle on a long shank hook. Have different, have different colors, because they will change colors. Now here's a balanced dragonfly nymph that has the eye right in the middle of the hook, so it hangs nice and balanced. But this is what we're trying to do when we're imitating, and we want to get that movement. So it's probably better to fish. If you're going to fish a balanced pattern, fish it under an indicator and just move that indicator big. I mean, move it about 2 feet. Pull it up, let it fall back down. Pull it up, let it fall back down. If you have the floating patterns, you really want to use a sinking line. You don't have to have a very long leader, maybe 6 or 8 foot leader, but you don't have to have a long leader at all. Pull the pattern down to the bottom, release your pressure on your retreat, and then here it comes floating up, because and then it goes back down when you pull, it goes back and forth, so that's the angle that you're trying to achieve. Now leeches, speaking as a trout, that's a nice juicy T-bone right there. That's a lot of food for them. So they're very aggressive, and there's a lot of them in the fall, but a lot of anglers don't know that there's a lot of them in the springtime too. So early spring and late fall. Now, if you're fishing on a still water that usually has a lot of chironomids or a lot of a food source that's constantly coming off the water in the spring, and you're not getting any hatches at all, switch over to leeches right away. I mean, that saved me on a guiding standpoint many, many days, where we're just not getting enough fish on the indicator on the chironomid. We switch over to a leech, and all of a sudden we just start getting grab after grab. So it saved me in the spring. It did that this year also. So 650 species of leeches worldwide, 600 in North America. Hardy and long-lived, they live everywhere. Marine, there's saltwater leeches. They live in lakes and ponds, rivers, that's the Nile, streams, bogs, and swamps. So they're in every bit of water that you can find. You usually find leeches. Now this is Crawley Lake. All I did is just walk over on the shore and flip a little rock over. That was maybe about the size of a dinner plate, a little bit smaller. And there's just hundreds of these little tiny little leeches that are about 1 inch long. Notice how clear they are. They're not very dark, so you have to have yourself a few different colors in your box. They love the muddy bottom. They can get almost to 6 inches long, so they go from the egg several weeks, and then they come into the baby form, go from the baby to the adult. Usually last about 1 year, but there are some that they found that have lasted up to 10 years. That's a pretty long time. The leeches are more nocturnal. They like low light. So this is Kerman, and those rocks, they look like they're pretty stuck to the bottom. Nothing can get underneath them, but I like to do a lot of exploring. So a lot of anglers do this in moving water. I do this in still water all the time. You find a lot of interesting stuff. And there's our little leech. And there he is crawling on my finger, trying to attach himself, I guess, to me. But low light situations like this, a lot of leeches underneath lily pads and weeds and logs and rocks and things like that. It's a really good pattern if you have some still waters that you can fish at night. I did a lot of fishing in Utah and Idaho for forever, 8 and 9 day trips. And I would do a lot of fishing at night. It was always leech pattern, something that was very, very dark. They can look right up into the stars, and then if you have a good moon or even a small moon, they can see everything they need to see to be able to attack it. A lot of different colors, blacks, browns, maroons, greens, rust colors. There's a lot of multicolored leeches, so it's good to kind of throw a little different color. If you have a black, throw a bunch of different colors in with the black. They're very confident swimmers. I didn't realize that they could swim like this. I've always watched them where they close up and then they open, close up and open, and they just kind of move around slow. Now, when there's more videos like this, they can really move swiftly through the water. So again, now I'm changing my tactics on how, if I'm not getting grabs on the old way that I used to present them, I'm going to speed them up a little bit and see if that works. But look how confident swimmers that they are. My apologies. There's a pregnant leech. There's the mama with all the little eggs, or the fully developed leeches in the bottom. She'll just spread those out as she moves along. So some leech patterns, and have a bunch of different colors. If you're going to tie a lot of black ones, throw some green in there, throw some olive, throw some red, throw some blue in there. They will make a distinct decision on if they want blue, they want black, they want olive, they want green. They do make a distinct choice. A lot of reds and purples. That's a great pattern. That's a pattern called Midnight Cowboy. We use that at Pyramid Lake. It's been used up there for eons. I got to tell you, if you fish Crawley Lake, that pattern right there hammers fish in the fall. I mean, they really like that blue and red and black combination. I've had some really big days on that pattern. Olives, have some different. So fly line tactics, again, you're going to have floating lines with the indicator. You can post two patterns up underneath the indicator, two leeches, a balanced one at the top or bottom, and a regular one up at the top. And then you can fish without the indicator, just casting and retrieving. I like that. I like to be at least maybe about 10 to 12 feet right in away that from the fly line, or have at least 5 feet longer than the water that you're going to be fishing in, so you get a nice little arch in the leader. The hover lines, same thing, 10 to 12 feet with the leader. So mayflies, or in a still water environment, we call them calabatus. In rivers, in streams and stuff like that, they can be 50-60% of a trout's diet. Really not so much in the still water. You will have some really good hatches that will come off, where you'll have maybe a month and a half or 2 months. And we had at Crawley Lake this year, we have high water. They're a high water bug. They love high water. So we had a really nice hatch that was in through June and all the way into September. And even right into October, and I'll show you the situation that we had late in October where they were coming off the water. Their life cycle is a lot more sophisticated. Egg to the nymph. Then they go from the nymph to the emerger, where they go to the surface and they pull themselves out. And now all of a sudden, okay, you're thinking, okay, now, oh, I'm an adult. I got my wings, I'm out. They fly around for 2 more days, and then they come out of that shell that they were in as the adult. They crack that open and come out, and then become a full adult after that. So they go through 2 cycles once they completely their wing. Then they fly around, they lay their eggs, and they become the spinner. So the mayfly nymphs, there's 4 different styles, or 4 different kinds. There's the crawler nymph that he's really fast water, rivers and streams can really cling to everything, and water can just be flying past them and they won't let go of the rocks. They're very confident moving around. Clinger, the burrower. Does anybody know the only one that the burrower is? It's a hex. They talk about the hex hatch and how those mayflies are like monster things. I mean, they're so big. Those are the ones that burrow underneath the bottom of the lake floor, and then they just kind of hibernate, stick their wings out there. Swimmer nymphs. And then here's the mayfly emerger, where it's coming to the surface and pulling itself out and trying to become the adult. Once they become the adult, they last for 2 days, and then they come out of that same shell that they were in and become another adult. They become a full adult after that. Then they dry out. And they look like that. That is the calabatus, the stillwater mayfly. Then they go to the spinner. After a couple of days, they lay their eggs, and the trout will also come up and eat them on the surface when they're in that situation. So what they're doing as they're nymphs, and the reason why I want to show you this is My goal for this presentation is not try to bore you out of your mind, but what I want you to know is that every item that I'm talking about, when you go back out in the water, think about what they're doing in the water so that you can try to get your pattern to do the same thing based on your different fly lines. So they come on a 33-degree angle. Now, not only do the trout like them, but this was the second week in October. And we're right pretty close to the mouth. We're in the V Bay, pretty close to the mouth. And the calabaetas and the trichos, which are smaller, they're darker mayflies, there was just thousands of them coming off the water, and the birds just came in and just started destroying them. So they like them a lot too. But that's how they swim. They get that little arch in their back, about a 33-degree angle, trying to get up to the surface, or push to the surface and become the adult. So that's what you want to try to get your pattern to look like, whether you're hanging it from an indicator or you have a long leader that you're pulling it up and letting it fall down, pulling it up, letting it fall down. These are my patterns I have really good success with. All these are is just basically a bird's nest. These are Sierra drifters. The light assassin did very, very well on those when the calabaetas were coming off the water, because as in the nymph stage, they're very, very light colored when they're moving up through the water. Have two different kinds. Have one that is balanced, like the one at the top. You can see the eyelet there where it's going to sit nice and level. Then have one more traditional. Now I have to tell you, you may not believe me, but when I have 2 and 3 guides on my boat, 2 or 3 anglers on my boat when I'm guiding, the trout make a distinct decision where they will get on one of those way faster than the other one. So I have an angler over here, she stuck 3 fish in a row, and my husband's over here and says, wow, I haven't even got a grab yet. We got the same fly? Yeah, we got the same fly, same color. Well, something's going on, and I go, yeah, it's the way that it's hanging in the water. One's level or one's straight up and down. So they do make a distinct decision. The prince nymphs and the pheasant tails, those type of patterns, the hare's ears do very, very well. It's good to have them with 2 different color heads, a dark head and a lighter head. I like the dark head early in the morning and overcast, and in the evening, and when the sun's out and it's pretty much bluebird sky, I like to use the gold or the copper head. And have them again in that balanced pattern or in the traditional where it's just hanging straight down from the eye. Had a little bit, maybe got almost about a dozen fish on some mayfly, dry flies, but pretty tough. I mean, they really focus in on the ones that are underneath the water. There's way more on the underneath the water than there is on the surface. But it is a fun thing to be able to cast some dry flies if you get the opportunity to do that. So, wearing you out with the floating lines, floating line with long leaders, hover lines, just to kind of show you how it works. So, we have a floating line here. We have a 14-foot non-tapered leader, 3X, and we're fishing calabaetas. We're fishing those little light calabaetas patterns. We're casting back into the weeds. My boat is anchored in 3 feet of water. We're casting up into about a foot of water and just pulling it slowly out away from the weeds. And also, if you can get even closer to the weeds, it's better. But you have to give yourself a little bit of distance. So no indicator, cast it about 50 feet, get 3 long straight pulls to get everything straightened out, and then count 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, and then pull it. And come back and count 1,001, there he is right there. They always usually seem to want it when it's falling. So that's where I'm sitting. I did this for 7 weeks. I mean, this was fun. Where we were back in anywhere from a foot of water, casting to a foot of water, out into like maybe 5 or 6. So we're sitting in really shallow water. You can see the weeds right on the bottom of the lake floor. They're just cruising right over the top of the weeds looking for them. Snails. Okay, if the French like them, I guess the trout can like them too, right? They're a delicacy for trout too. There's a lot of them in the fall. I'll explain why there's so many in the fall. With snails, you'll get the biggest concentration September, October, and November. Eggs last about a week. They go to the baby snail, then 4 to 7 weeks, and they last as the adult. There's several hundred species of them. There's some that are on my anchor rope right there. That's a bad picture, I'm sorry, because it doesn't have enough light in it. But there's a little closer look of some snails there. Now, there's part of my anchor chain right there. And that anchor chain was only in the water for 30 minutes. And that many congregated on there. So what happens is, snails hang on to the weeds. They can't really swim too much. They just kind of float up and down, up and down. But when the weeds disappear, they're just at the mercy of just getting pushed around by the current and the wind. Any area that the wind's been blowing in a constant direction for a little while, there's stacks of them on the bottom. Stacks and stacks. If there's a little bay that the wind's been blowing into and you got a little bowl, there's just millions of them that congregate in there because they're just at the mercy of the currents and the wind. And when the wind goes down, the water goes down, you find a lot of the dried out shells there. Some of the patterns are pretty simple. Jan Stillwater snail, Gary Borders, 2 different snail patterns, mimic crystal snail. I prefer these. I like to make them out of foam, very, very tiny. Maybe the size of your pinky nail, maybe up to the size of your middle fingernail, but pretty small guys. They're not very big. The shells, there's a turbo snail, and I guess they've been doing pretty well on that. I've never fished it, but I found that on the internet. And the floating lines, intermediate sinking. So what your strategy is this. So they float. What they do is they float up, and then they slowly float back down. They float up, and they float back down. So when you're trying to imitate that, you do one of 2 things. You either have a weighted snail pattern that goes down underneath the indicator, or on a long leader, and you pull it up and let it fall back down. Or the way that I like to do it is, I like to go the reverse way, where you have a sinking line and the snail floats. I drag it down like I did the dragonfly nymph, and then I just let it come up really slow. And then it gets to the top of the leader, and then I drag it right back down and let it come up. And they like them. They're very, very soft, so they don't hurt. You just barely put your finger on them, and the shell will crack. There's a nice snail belly fish where you can put your hand up underneath their belly and actually feel the hardness of the shells in the fish's stomach. It's pretty cool. This is my favorite thing right here. So this is the predator against the prey. This is bait fish. And you use bait fish patterns because you're looking for bigger fish. They're looking for a bigger meal. So this is really exciting. These are tootie chubs from Crawley Lake. So I don't know if anybody knew that they were in there, but the tootie chubs will hatch out or spawn out 1 month before the perch fry. So the trout really get introduced to what's swimming around in the water, and they get really long. They don't get that big hard thing up on the top of them, so that when they get larger, that the trout don't want to eat them. They get afraid of them. But those are pretty good patterns to use, long and skinny in the beginning of the season. So late summer through the fall, minnows, fry, and bait fish. And what's exciting is, bait fish is going to be in the stage where they don't get very big. They just stay pretty small their whole life. The fry will be small, and then they'll become the adult after about a year or so, and that's what the Sacramento perch right there will do. But here's some perch fry right here, Sacramento perch, little bitty guys. That's what you're looking for. So this is in the marina. None of the trout are going to come into the marina and attack those in the daylight hours. But you're looking out on the lake. You're looking around on the edge of the weed line, and you're looking for big bait balls like that. If you can find those, you just back way away from them and start casting in and watching the trout come in and feed on them. The trout will come in and circle them up and then shoot through them, then come right back around and pick off the ones that have been wounded or can't really move. And then they move on, they go back out and wait for the minnows to gather themselves up again. So there's flatheads, there's shiners, redfin, there's a bunch of different fry, small minnows, Sacramento perch. Wow, whoa, what happened here? How on earth did I go? So, that's the word. Okay, so there's a bunch of different bait fish patterns that we can use, light and dark, the punk perch patterns, the hornbirds, the lowbirds, the tucas, a bunch of different things. You can get really fancy, fish a lot of patterns that are pretty extravagant, but don't get away from just some down-home cooking. So these are my calabatus patterns. These are the ones that look like the calabatus when they're coming up. But if you take them in a balanced position and you look at them sideways, they look like a little minnow. So we switch these out all the time to imitate the fry at Crawley, whether they're light or they're dark. And also the hare's ears will do the same thing. The pheasant tails with the flashback on them, that's a really nice little fry or minnow imitation. So I have two of those. I have one with the dark head and one with the light head. Balanced or unbalanced. If the balanced ones, if you're trying to imitate fry in the water, are perfect. So the bait fish are hiding. They're trying to hide in all the weeds that they can. So you're going to find them up against the weeds in the fall. And the bait fish are in there right up against the weeds. They're balled up. They're trying to hide. And the trout know that. So the trout will just move right in up against the weeds and really start feeding on them. So this is a really good scenario. See them on the left-hand side here. They're coming up. They're getting right up against the weeds. You'll see them spit some up. So they're really in there after the minnow. What they do is they use the edge of the weeds and the surface, and they ball them up and they push them up, and then they shoot through them, and then come back and grab the ones that have been wounded. And then they do this over and over and over. And you can watch this, and sometimes if you're not getting grabs, it will drive you crazy. You can see them working the minnows, and you're like, man, I'm making a good cast here. Eat my minnow. But it's exciting to watch them. Now, if you physically can't see all the minnows, use the birds, because the birds will come in and just attack them. They love to eat little tiny fry and little tiny minnows. The birds will tell you where they're at. So the seagulls, the western grebes, the pelicans, oh man, well, anyways, I know they got to eat, but I hate the pelicans, but they will get right in the middle of the weeds and scoop the fry, just boom, 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 boom. I mean, you just attack them, tear them apart. If you get lucky and you do it the right way, you get a really nice fish. That fish was in 1.5 feet of water when I hooked it. My boat was in 3 feet, and there's a little tiny minnow pattern that I was using to imitate the fry that was in the water. It was a pretty good fat specimen right there that's been eating a lot of minnows. That concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. I'm very humbled that you would have me speak to you again. And I will take any questions that you have at this time. Thank you so much. Questions or comments for me?
Any recommendations as to books?
Yeah, not to put the authors down and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of really nice books, but I'm going to tell you, you can just go in on the internet and you can just type fry pattern or minnow, and there's so much information that will just be gone over and over and over and over. YouTube videos, I've got a YouTube video that says trout eating fry. You might get 50 or 60 videos where people have dumped them on there. They'll talk about their tactics a lot of times and stuff. So I would do that before you spend the money on the book. The books are nice. I mean, don't get me wrong, and I don't want the anglers and the authors who have made them to get upset, but I mean, there's just so much stuff on the internet. It's ridiculous. I mean, if you want to go fix your washing machine and you don't want to spend